Hey everybody, welcome to Latter-day Struggles. This is your host Valerie. Grateful to have you guys here back again with me today. As promised in the last episode, I am getting ready to kick off with you guys a 5-part series on a report that has to do with a bunch of scholars who got together and for free did a huge amount of research and analysis, and they compiled what they're calling the LDS Personal Faith Crisis Report. Now, this has been out for many years. It is, I don't know how easily attainable it is, but I think I can link it to you. I can give this link to you on the show notes. It's about, I don't know, it's over 100 pages long. It came out and was discussed and presented to church headquarters clear back in 2013 in an effort to help the church better understand the nature of faith crisis. And it is believed that it is one of the reasons why the Gospel Topics essays were finally published. Now, some of us may believe that that they might be a little too little and too late. And certainly I think they're too little, if not too late. But I wanted to go ahead, as I read through this faith crisis report, it occurred to me that this would be a very, very useful, this would be a very good use of our time together if I were to package this and break it down with you. I'm going to give you today an overview of what this is. And then I'm going to break down what episodes, this is, like I said, a 5-part series. And then I'm going to talk you through today what to expect on second, third, fourth, and fifth parts of this series so that you can buckle up and get ready for this. And please, I want to encourage you guys to share this far and wide. I did not know this existed. One of the people in one of my small groups gave this to everybody in the group, and we spent the week on the private group Facebook page that these folks have created for themselves, processing and going through this. And the ask was, can you please talk about this and break it down and analyze it on the podcast? So today I'm here clearly by myself. And then in the next 4 episodes, I believe, if I can pull it off, I'm going to have Nathan here by my side so that we can talk about this together. But what you're going to hear is I'm actually going to do a fair amount of reading, mostly because I think the written word here is actually very, very well done. And it's going to give you a really great overview of what this is so that in the next 4 episodes of this series, you'll have a really, really good sense of what this document and what this report is. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so in March of 2019, this was written March of 2019. From October of 2011 until August of 2013, an unpaid team of scholars, strategists, and other volunteers conducted research, synthesized findings, and developed a number of strategic recommendations aimed at helping LDS leaders better understand and more compassionately minister to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in a faith crisis, meaning members experiencing severe emotional turmoil resulting from discovering church history facts that do not align with the traditional narratives of the church. This faith crisis project was self-initiated and completed pro bono, meaning that the work was conducted without compensation. Okay, so I'm going to read to you this. Okay, let me just go ahead and keep quoting. The following pages of this report contain a copy of the LDS Personal Faith Crisis Report delivered to senior church leaders in the early summer of 2013. And then they also go on to talk about how there was a supplemental report that I won't be going too much into, but it was appended to the preliminary report. And it was called the Faith Crisis Chronicles, which is, several, 50 or so testimonials of people's personal faith crisis experiences and also what their status was in the church before they went through the crisis. Okay, so the report goes on to state who was involved in this massive effort to help church officials at church headquarters understand what was going on. I'm going to go ahead and read here again from this report. Many individuals contributed to this project and warrant appreciation. An extended team of scholars and professionals donated countless hours to developing content, reviewing, and providing valuable feedback. The majority of the team is based in the United States, but several members are internationally based. Contributors hold advanced degrees in American history, anthropology, brand strategy, business strategy, digital and social media, law, literature and philosophy, literature and religion, pathology, psychology, sociocultural modeling, and statistics. I think this is a very important piece, you guys. Back to the quote. All team members love the church and wish to see our members suffer less as a result of this faith crisis. So basically, you guys, what this report is this is the compilation of a team of very, very invested scholars who want the church to understand the nature of our church's current crisis. And they came together and they analyzed this on their own free time, and they volunteered their expertise to help the church better understand what it is that we are going through in this hemorrhaging of the church. Okay, now I'm going to read to you guys what was the impetus and some of the background and some of the key players in this research project. Okay. In May of 2011, a New York City-based brand strategist named Travis Stratford met with LDS historian Greg Prince at Greg Prince's home in suburban Washington, D.C. Among the topics discussed during their visit was the treatment of questioning members by some well-intentioned but untrained local leaders. In particular, the two discussed the ongoing tensions between their mutual friend, LDS podcaster and scholar John Dehlin, and his local leaders in North Logan, Utah. On May 24th of 2011, Stratford, who was also a returned missionary from Sweden, contacted former Area Authority 70 Hans Mattsson in Sweden and proposed a team project aimed at helping the brethren in Salt Lake City better understand faith crisis, which is the emotional distress and strained relationships resulting from the members discovering church history facts that do not align with the traditional LDS narratives. Mattsson enthusiastically agreed to help and recommended the team meet with Elder Marlon K. Jensen, who was a member of the first Quorum of the 70 and the church's official historian and recorder. And these all three, actually Prince, Mattsson, and Jensen, all three were personal friends, I guess. Okay, back to the quote. On May 27th, 2011, Mattsson sent Jensen the proposed New York City meeting location, meeting objectives, proposed agenda, attendees list, which included Mattsson, Stratford, and Prince. After clearing the meeting with President Boyd K. Packard, the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles at the time, on June 18th, 2011, Jensen agreed to meet on October 24th, 2011 in Manhattan, New York. By the end of September of 2011, Dehlin had designed an ethnographic survey aimed at collecting data that could be used at the Jensen meeting in New York City. On October 13th, 2011, the survey went to a self-selected group of survey participants recruited via social media. On October 19th, 2011, the survey had captured over 3,000 responses. With only 6 days until the Jensen meeting, the team, including extended team members, let's see here, I'm going to skip those names, quickly analyzed and surveyed the data. Using the team's October 2011 survey analysis and with general feedback from several LDS subject matter experts, including Richard Bushman, Fiona and Terrell Givens, and Russell Moorhead, on October 23, 2011, Mattsson, Prince, and Stratford met in New York to finalize the team's strategy presentation. The content covered 6 topics. Number 1, current challenges facing the LDS Church. Number 2, the seismic impact of Google and social media. Number 3, the ample availability of uncorrelated church information online. Number 4, the typical stages of faith crisis. Number 5, findings from the church's ethnographic surveys. And number 6, strategic recommendations for church leaders. On October 24th, 2011, Mattsson, Prince, Stratford, and Jensen met in an office in the top floor of the Citibank Center in Manhattan, New York. During this meeting, which lasted from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., the group discussed all 6 sections of the presentation. The meeting tone was professional, but also very somber as the group candidly discussed the painful stories of individuals and families affected by faith crisis. Offering gratitude for the team's efforts and underscoring the importance of the presentation's content, at the end of the meeting, Jensen invited Stratford to deliver the same presentation to a group of senior church leaders in Salt Lake City, Utah. After several failed attempts by Jensen to get the leadership's approval for a faith crisis meeting in Salt Lake, a January 29, 2012 Washington Post op-ed critical of the church's handling of its history reportedly caused enough alarm amongst the leadership of the church that the faith crisis meeting was finally approved. On February 23, 2012, Jensen hosted a 3-hour closed-door working lunch at the Joseph Smith Memorial Building in Salt Lake City. Stratford presented the New York faith crisis material to a room full of general authorities, church public affairs representatives, and church history department leaders. At the end of the meeting, the leaders in attendance expressed their appreciation for the team's work and communicated their desire to adopt the report's recommendations. With introductions provided by Prince, between March 2012 and February 2013, Stratford visited Salt Lake on several other occasions to informally consult with individual leaders about the pain and turmoil caused by faith crisis. In private, many leaders expressed to Stratford their willingness to promote greater empathy and understanding toward members in faith crisis and their families. But given political dynamics within the leadership, very little on the topic was discussed publicly with the general membership. With the encouragement from Prince and the LDS scholar Rob Reese, in early February of 2013, Grieth Peterson, a former member of the Young Women's General Board, contacted Jensen to discuss how church leaders could more proactively implement the team's faith crisis recommendations. As part of this discussion, Jensen offered to personally convey the team's faith crisis presentation directly to President Dieter F. Uchtdorf, then second counselor in the first presidency. Jensen requested that Stratford prepare a written version of the presentation that could stand alone without oral presentation. Between February and April of 2013, Stratford and team prepared the Uchtdorf printed report, which they titled, this is what I'm reading to you guys, or what I'm studying. This was titled the LDS Personal Faith Crisis. Key collaborators and reviewers at this stage included Grieth and Chase Peterson, Fiona and Terrell Givens, Joanna Brooks, Rob Reese, Greg Prince, and Moorhead. These are all very familiar names if you're familiar at all in the scholarly world of LDS church. Okay, on July 15th, 2013, Uchtdorf's secretary organized a meeting between Stratford and Uchtdorf to take place at Uchtdorf's office on August 23rd, 2013. On July 20th, 2013, the New York Times published a front page story called "Some Mormons Search the Web and Find Doubt," spotlighting the faith crisis journey of former Area Authority 70 and faith crisis team member Han Madsen. And this article highlighted several difficult aspects of church history. This article, which was syndicated across the globe and quickly went viral, reportedly made an alarming impact with church leaders in Salt Lake. The article further underscored the gravity of the team's faith crisis work. On August 23rd, 2013, Stratford arrived in Salt Lake City for his meeting with Elder Uchtdorf. Upon arrival, the church administration building and clearing security, Stratford learned that Uchtdorf unexpectedly was unable to meet with him. Stratford left the printed copy of the Faith Crisis Chronicles, which Uchtdorf later acknowledged via receipt letter to Stratford. On October 6, 2013, a few months after receiving the Faith Crisis report, Uchtdorf delivered his seminal general conference address titled "Come Join With Us," in which he acknowledged to the church's worldwide membership that past leaders had, quote, made mistakes that had caused some members to have doubts, an admission that was a significant shift in tone towards members with questions. Uchtdorf also taught that it was inappropriate for other members to assume that those with doubts, quote, have been offended or are lazy or sinful. 2 months later, in December of 2013, the church published the first of its gospel topic essays, which seek to address many of the historical and doctrinal issues raised in the LDS Personal Faith Crisis and Faith Crisis Chronicle reports. According to the church history department leaders, the essays were administratively spearheaded by Dieter F. Uchtdorf. In the months following delivery of the LDS Personal Faith Crisis and Faith Crisis Chronicles reports, several general authorities told Stratford that the team's work had been received by several other prominent general authorities and that both reports were on file at the church's restricted research library, where only top leaders were able to access these sensitive reports. Okay, I'm going to pause there just because that's the report that we're reading. They restricted to their top secret vaults through the church, but clearly they didn't own the record because it was not theirs. They had not created it. And so, of course, it has now been published. And that is now what I am talking with you about today. So the essence of this, even though I do apologize that I did read you quite a bit, I wanted to give you a lot of background on what this is, because this is the essence of what we as a church are struggling with. And I was personally quite surprised that this analysis, not only had it been done, but it had been delivered, and that it would seem to me that those at the top levels of authority in the church know about it. And we're going on 10 years ago, and yet here we still are. So let's move on and talk a little bit more about what else we are going to discuss in these next 5 episodes. Okay, so in episode number 2, what we're going to do in the second part of this series is I'm going to actually break down for you the formal objectives of this research project. Also, the researchers, research team's definition of faith crisis, their own personal assessment from their professional perspectives as far as why this project was needed and why the brethren need to hear about it. I'm also going to review with you, this team found that there is a need for new metrics, and I'm going to talk all about that. That basically the church had one way of measuring in the church that this team assessed as a poor measure of health in the church, and they propose a new way of looking at that. In the next episode, we're also going to just briefly review over the team came up with an analysis about innovation. And I'm going to talk with you guys a little bit about the difference between disruptive innovation as opposed to sustainable innovation, meaning that this team of researchers was really encouraging the church to look at how the internet has changed the nature of truth telling. And the institutions and organizations that stay up with innovation are the ones that stick around. Those who do not die. Next, I'm going to talk with you a little bit. This is all episode 2. Let's see how much I can get through. I want to talk to you about just an overview of what this team of researchers found as factors that drive faith crisis. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the demographics of the 3,000 plus people that participated in this survey. It's fascinating because most of these people are historically some of the highest participating members of the church. And then I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of their key findings. In episode number 3, I'm going to walk you through the stages of faith crisis. These researchers did a phenomenal job breaking down for the Q15 what actually happens when people go through faith crisis. And it's just amazing. And I can't wait to share this with you. Very profound. And in the 4th part of the series, I'm going to talk you guys through another phenomenal finding of this team, which is an overview of what they call the perpetual cycle of disaffection, what people actually feel and go through, the emotional, psychological, and spiritually devastating experience that people have when they disaffect from the church because of faith crisis that is unaddressed by the church. And then finally, in the 5th part of this series, I'm going to walk through this research team's recommendations on how to break this cycle. And they offer 5 potential insights and strategies. Okay. All right. At the end of the at the end of the faith crisis report, the collaborators, this team actually wrote this, and I wanted to share it with you because I find it incredibly profound. They said this is an urgent but thoughtful approach to how to help the church help itself. Although a daunting challenge, the wrong approach would be to do nothing to address the faith crisis epidemic that our church is in. The longer we wait, the more difficult and complex the challenges will likely become. Urgency is needed, but it should also be acknowledged that there is a risk in publicly recognizing that such faith crises actually exist. Some saints might have never known these faith-eroding issues may become vulnerable when these issues are publicly examined. Some argue that we should promote only what is called a faithful history, that sanitizes the past and represses or even covers up discrepancies between an arranged or constructed historical narrative and historical and scientific fact. While upsetting vulnerable members is a risk, it can be ameliorated by presenting troubling issues in a careful, open, and even faithful context. That is, by demonstrating that a mature faith can and should allow for error, mistakes, and a full range of human capabilities that result from agency. One could argue that such a healthy approach diminishes dishonesty and hypocrisy and allows for individual saints to face their own failings and imperfections with greater honesty and candor, thereby producing greater and emotional spiritual health. You guys go back and listen to that last 30 seconds again, because I tell you what, I can't even tell you how strongly I feel about that. Okay, back to the quote. If the brethren in the institutional church can set the example that it is possible to face troubling issues openly and honestly, it will enable members, weak and strong, to do the same. The alternative is to continue to pretend that these issues do not exist and to be defensive about them, and thus continue to lose some of the church's best, brightest, and most spiritual members. That this problem is challenging does not mean that it is unsolvable. There are many, our team included, there are many who are ready to help the church design and implement an approach for addressing this issue in a way that both strengthens the church and helps it fulfill its divine destiny. This faith crisis report closes with this phenomenal quote by Elder B.H. Roberts. And this is what he says. The position is not assumed that the men of the new dispensation, its prophets, apostles, presidencies, and other leaders are without faults or infallible. Rather, they are treated as men of like passions with their fellow men. But while the officers and members of the church possess this spiritual treasure, they carried it in earthen vessels, and that earthliness with their human limitations is plainly manifest on many occasions and in various ways, both in personal conduct and in collective deportment. But back of all of that, and it should never be lost sight of, is the supreme fact, and it was a controlling element in all of their proceedings, that they occupied such relation with God that they were, on occasion, moved upon to speak and act as God would speak and act. Okay, I'm going to close this episode with a quote by Elder B.H. Roberts, and I'm going to sort of give you a little bit of a overview of it before I quote it, because he's, this was written a long time ago, and his way of talking, at least to me, is a little bit confusing. He's basically going to talk about how prophets and leaders are not infallible, and the fact that we are trying to, as a church, make them infallible actually brings up a lot of inherent issues. And he even goes so far as to say that on occasion they speak prophetically, but oftentimes they do not, and we need to have the power to discern when this is happening and when it doesn't. Okay, so let me go ahead and just start with the quote. He says this. The position is not assumed that the men of the new dispensation, its prophets, apostles, presidencies, and other leaders are without faults or infallible. Rather, they are treated as men with like passions with their fellow men. And while the church officers and members of the church may possess some spiritual treasure, they carry this treasure in earthen vessels, and their earthliness, with their human limitations, is plainly manifested on many occasions and in various ways, both in personal conduct and in collective deportment. But beyond all of that, it should never be lost sight of, and it is a supreme fact, and it was the controlling element of all of their proceedings, that these leaders occupied such relation with God that they were, on occasion, moved upon to speak and act as God would speak and act. And when they spoke and acted, when prompted by the inspiration of God, then, and only then, what they said and what they did is the word and will of God and the power of God unto salvation. The only way such a task, teaching church history, can be accomplished in the judgment of this writer is to frankly state events as they occurred in full consideration of all related circumstances, allowing the line of condemnation or of justification to fall where it may, being confident that in the sum of things justice will follow truth, and God will be glorified in his work, no matter what may befall individuals or groups of individuals. So to put this in a nutshell, what he's basically saying is we have to be honorable and truth-telling and let the chips fall where they may. No matter what happens, even back then, Elder B.H. Roberts was saying sometimes they speak in truth and sometimes they do not. But what we have to do when we teach about the history of the church, especially, and I would go so far as to say other elements as well, is we have to be committed and tenaciously committed to the pursuit of truth, of the telling of truth, of the recording of truth, and of the being able to talk about less savory parts of our history. And in so doing, we are actually cultivating in the church membership more psychological and a spiritual ability to actually decide for themselves how to manage that truth. And he says it shouldn't be, at the end, he says, God will be glorified no matter what may befall individuals or groups of individuals. If the church fails because it cannot tolerate its own true church history, then what Roberts is basically saying is that is as it should be. But what he's also saying is we're actually cultivating in our membership psychological abilities to tolerate complexity. So, what this report is trying to help us all understand is that the highest form of worship is the telling of truth. And what they're trying to help the leaders at the general level of the church understand is that people are in very honest crisis because they have not been honored. Their desire for truth has not been honored, and they're encouraging the leadership of the church to be accountable and to make some changes in the church to help people not struggle and suffer from the mishandling of church history up to this point. Now, it's a little sobering to me that this report came out in 2013, and here we are almost in 2023, and not much has changed. But I wanted to just give you more about what this report says. And like I said, we're going to go more deeply into this in the next 4 episodes of this series. So hang in there, stay with me. And I'm grateful to be a voice of truth, helping you understand your own faith crisis, helping you feel like you're not alone, helping you feel like you're in good company, and that what you're struggling with is actually evidence of the nature of your own maturity. And that there's something very, very special about you if you're going through this crisis, because it means that actually you are on a spiritually developing path that is honorable. It's beautiful. And so even though it's disorienting and it's very challenging, you're in good company. And I'm grateful to be on this journey with you. All right, so go ahead, and if you're willing, please rate and review this podcast on iTunes or Spotify. If you want support, as I mentioned before, because of the rapid growth of this podcast, I am offering some small groups right now. Well, I'm not going to be specific because I know people are downloading this all the time, but if you're interested in joining a small group, which is about 20 screens on a Zoom, 20 Zoom screens. Anyways, go ahead and reach out to me at info@valeriehamaker.com. And please subscribe to this podcast if you've not already done so. And please share this far and wide. Like I said, we're going to go deeply into this faith crisis survey, and I'm going to give you a lot more information. And I hope this overview was helpful for you and has you ready for the next couple of weeks of analysis. We'll talk to you guys later. See ya. Bye-bye.